Okay. At this point, we'll do a roll call, please.
Mr. Butler,
Yes.
Ms. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Helmer,
Yes.
Mr. Island,
Yes.
Mr. Standish,
Yes.
Webster's here, Mr. Moore is absent.
Thank you. Now, if everyone please rise and repeat the pledge of allegiance after. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We move on to the approval of the agenda. From last meeting, February 20th.
Could I just add again, D for commissioner comments? Under, communication A, D.
I'll support that motion.
Yes. That's. Okay, so. Entertain a motion for to approve the agenda with the changes as needed.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, all those opposed? Thank you. Now we'll move on to the approval of the minutes from February 20th. Starting with page 1 of 4.
I have a notice on page 1, it says 2023 at the top.
Didn't see that. Giving the right, my checks the right way.
Well, then actually, as you look down December 19th, 2023. Oh, there, yeah, that'd be 23. Yeah, never mind. All right, moving on to page 2. Page 3. Page 4. What's the
So moved. With the correction?
correction?
Support.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? All right. Passes. Now we'll move on to public comments. At this point, we'll invite anyone from the crowd that would like to come up and say a few words. You're speaking on behalf of yourself. You have 3 minutes as a group of 5. And this will be your time to come up and speak. Don't say anything. So at this point, is there anyone in the crowd? Mr. Swan?
Pass out my comments so you can follow along. It should only take 4 minutes. I'm speaking for.
Thanks.
Evening, I am David Swan. I own property at 876 Park Street in the critical dune area within 2 miles of the proposed special approval use marina at the river mouth. Saugatuck Township's Code of Ordinances, section 40693 is clear. The special approval use marina for North Shore of Saugatuck has expired and shall, operative phrase, be terminated. And I quote, any property which is the subject of a special approval use permit, which has not been used for the purposes for which such special approval was granted for a period of 6 consecutive months without acceptable just cause beyond the control of the owner being shown to the Planning Commission, shall thereafter be required to be used only for permissible uses as set forth in the particular zoning classification, and the permit for which special approval use shall thereupon terminate. We went through all 57 Planning Commission minutes since 2017. You can find these on the township website, as you all know. We searched the documents for the words Patnos, Bosgrad, Gabriel's, North Shore, and special approval use. While we did find instances where the applicant addressed this commission on the subject of wellhead ordinance, the natural river overlay, and separate projects, no one representing North Shore of Saugatuck has shown the planning commission why they have been unable to move forward with their special approval use marina project. Not once in 7 years. Allowing a special approval use to languish unused for 7 years with no updates from the applicant sets a very dangerous precedent. There are multiple reasons the project has not started. The applicant can't figure out how to engineer the project without draining the wetlands, without destroying the site of Singapore, without erasing 6.5 acres of critical dunes, without destroying the cultural values of the Potawatomi, without changing the character of the Rivermouth neighborhood and surrounding area. Eagle and Army Corps recognize this and have both denied the permit application. As an aggrieved party, I am once again requesting the Planning Commission add this to their next agenda and formally terminate the special approval use marina. The public deserves to have this issue discussed, just as the commission is hearing the proposed extension of other projects this evening publicly. This community has questions about the special approval use marina, and those questions should be answered. This commission is the correct venue for that conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Is there anyone online?
If anyone on Zoom wants to speak, raise your hand, please. Going once, going twice. Nope.
Right, at this point, I'll close public comment period. We will move on to old business. Seeing none, we'll move on to new business. I guess we, at this point, I don't know, maybe you wanna.
Yeah, I'm kind of happy to introduce these items. So the first is a request for a 1-year extension on the approved site plan and special approval use for Blue Star Brewery. This is per section 40.818C. The original approval was granted March 21, 2023. The extension would be to March 21, 2025, because they had the 1 year. So in the packet, there's a request. They're looking at alternative ways to lay out the site. They do know that if the layout changes beyond what is considered minor on the site plan, that they would have to come back to the planning commission. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the request to extend this for a period of 1 year.
And they filed within the 1 year.
They did file, we recently got this letter, so yeah, we are within that 1 year
So-
timeframe. Thank you.
Support.
I'll let you take this one because I sit down on this one.
Oh, that's right, yeah. Okay, so Jackie.
Yes.
Is there any reason why, I'm assuming this is discussion right now. Since we have a motion and a support, right? Okay. Is the only reason is because of the, as is noted here, is because they're looking at the site plan in regards to some of the things that we discussed? As a possible change and.
So they are working on complying with all the conditions of the planning commission, of course. If they aren't able to comply with those, they would again have to come back to you to make any changes. They were aware that we're working on a zoning ordinance. So they're also looking at whether changes in the ordinance may be more or less advantageous to their site layout. So that's one item. They're also looking at modifying some of the ways that they're delivering on that food component. As you'll recall, they had those exterior, that exterior kitchen and now they're looking at other ways of doing that. So it might mean that they move forward still with what was approved, but they're just kind of evaluating that program. But they have been in contact with us. I've had 2 Zoom calls looking at their site plan. They're also in discussions with maybe using some of the existing car repair business, which would again be a major change. They would come back, but they're still doing some of that due diligence. So it isn't that we haven't been in contact with them or haven't been in touch with the changes that they're looking at.
Okay.
You don't need to do a roll call. You could just do, general.
Okay, does someone agree with extending? Are you asking for a vote? Do we
You
need
can
to
do a voice
or a
vote.
voice
All those in
vote?
favor.
Oh, voice vote, yes.
So you could call for all those in favor.
Mr. Butler?
Just
No, we're not all, just all in favor.
all in favor.
Aye.
Let the record reflect that Mr. Eiley, abstained from taking any action on this. No, he recused it.
I'm gonna give my reason to this.
He recused.
She recused himself. Okay, the
That's
next.
different. Okay.
Yes, then on to B for auto camp.
Great. John Hussey requested 1-year extension on their approved special land use and site plan for a campground use per the township zoning ordinance, section 40-818C. Original approval granted on February 21, 2023, extension to February 21, 2025. This is a bit tardy, we realize. We do have a letter on file from John Hussey. He's on the screen as well. But as you know, the township has been in discussions with the city of the Village of Douglas about our utilities and availability. We had hoped that we would have that addressed by that February deadline. There were some additional conversations, and so we haven't hit that deadline yet. They are still interested in moving forward with this request. By granting this 1-year extension, we're not giving them any more time. It would still be to that February deadline.
Are we allowed, if they don't apply within the 1 year, are we allowed to grant it? I mean, I would like to, he's close enough, I'd like to do it, if we can do it.
Yeah,
But if they
I
have
read
it,
to you the language. Site plan approval is valid for a period of 1 year from the date of planning commission action. Within that year, substantial progress towards completion of the site plan must be achieved. After that year, progress must continue at a reasonable pace to full completion. If these requirements are not met, the planning commission may, in its discretion, grant an extension or allow the site plan approval to become invalid and void. In deciding whether to grant the extension, the planning commission should consider the following: whether the construction encountered unforeseen difficulties and whether the construction is now ready to proceed to completion. So it doesn't say that it has to be requested within that year. It does talk about progress, substantial progress. And there have been those conversations with those entities that have been in, they've been meaningful conversations. They've been conversations that have to occur between the council, the city of the Village of Douglas, their council, our township manager, our township leadership, and those are occurring. So they're sort of outside the purview of the applicant. They're kind of waiting patiently.
I know this is probably a long conversation that I don't want it to turn into that, but just maybe in a nutshell, are the sewer questions, is it advancing? Does it seem positive?
I can address that just because it just so happened that last night, Supervisor Bigford and I went to the Douglas City Council meeting. And we did it friendly gesture, we haven't met some of them. But I did speak to the 4 areas that we've been cooperating on, one being the sewer capacity agreement. So after the meeting, it's the first time I had met, they have a relatively new manager. I hadn't met her yet, so we chatted. And I brought that up again. She made it sound like not a lot of progress has been made. I hope that's not true. I do check in with our manager on this, so we need to do what we can to accelerate this and make sure it's on the meeting, of course. I haven't heard anything like a red flag, but it has been slow.
Yeah, and there have been the changes in leadership.
That's
Right, and I realize that that's probably one of the biggest hiccups, I think, in the process was the change in leadership on Douglas's end. So,
Do you wanna, what would you think about changing it to 6 months? Since they are somewhat a little tardy, just so we can take a look at it. And if there's been some progress in the negotiations, we can hear back from either John or from Mr. DeFranco. I mean, technically, they should have filed within the 1 year, and I have a sneaking suspicion that extensions are going to be a hot topic going forward, especially after the presentation we had tonight. So I would make a motion to extend it for 6 months. We can still extend it after that, but I would still like to see if they are making some progress with the city of the village of Douglas.
Our ordinance doesn't allow that, correct?
Our ordinance doesn't say, it just says the planning commission may grant an extension. It doesn't say period of time, the 1 year was
Right.
the recommendation of staff.
I have to disagree with Mr. Butler, is that I don't see that, right now for this applicant, that it's no fault of theirs that it hasn't really, they haven't done anything on that property. It's us in the township, and the 2 entities are not doing it timely enough, and I think we need to put the pressure on them so that they get it done, and I agree that, I don't know why they can't get it done, it's been over a year, and, so that this group, Mr. Hess knows whether it's gonna be able to be done or not, and if it's, I mean, it's no fault of his, or that group, so, I would disagree with Mr. Butler, I do think it's important that we probably, are, kept informed about how things are moving, so that we are able to get ahead of it rather than behind it, and that we keep track of the time. That would be my advice.
Would a 6-month extension be fuel to the fire to accelerate this process?
I don't think so.
What do you think capacity issue? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
I don't see how.
No.
I mean, it would be nice if it were, but there's so many other, you know, Calais involved, the 2 cities, I mean, the township and the city.
So, because again, if it doesn't happen, they're gonna come back and we're gonna deny them, it's no fault of theirs.
Well, I guess at some point, if there is progress, we're going to approve it, and if there's no progress, at some point, we have to say, since there's no progress, we have to deny it.
and
Well,
there's one thing I do know is government doesn't move quickly. So, I mean, I think a year is fair. because
I would think Mr.
it's the
Yeah,
time that-
Mr. Hess is gonna probably say, enough of this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree on the year. I agree with everything you just said. I have a question on clarification, if I may. The original permit that we approved, or application, was that given to AutoCamp or to Mr. Hunt?
They're gonna have to pull that file.
I mean, Mr. Hess, it's good to see you again.
The original,
Is
yeah.
you left AutoCamp and this is a new entity that would be doing the camp?
so AutoCamp is still involved in and interested in the project. I did leave AutoCamp for other personal reasons, but I'm still advising Chad and hoping to bring AutoCamp along in the process. So I think the original application, and Lene, you can check me if I'm wrong, was Chad and Jenny Van Hor's owners, AutoCamp, and myself as the applicant, or something like that. So I'm not sure how that works, but I
And
believe that.
it does run, a special use runs with the land.
Yes.
So while ownership can change, the use is attached to those parcels that were part of the special land use.
Correct.
Okay, because also just the word on the street is that the plan has changed quite a bit as well.
I haven't seen any.
There's be fewer airstreams and some permanent type cabins. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's.
No,
what I
yeah, we
hear.
haven't changed. We have not changed anything on the plan per se. We've always had, even in AutoCamps, if you look at the original application, there was a description of, we had Airstreams, ADA cabins, as well as tents. And so that mixture is still in the play of how we do that. We may expand the cabins to offer like 2-bedroom units just to accommodate more families and stuff, but that mix is still pretty consistent with what we've been thinking about the whole time. So generally the plan is, if there are fewer units, it's because of phasing. It's not that we still are trying to keep our full entitlements of the 112 units that were approved. But if we do fewer units, that'd just be a phasing issue in terms of cost management and when we introduce Airstreams or cabins or tents along the way.
Thank you.
Yep.
So, well, there was a motion on the floor for 6 months,
But that failed.
but I had no second. So
I would move to,
Let's do it.
towards the 1-year extension.
Second.
Second by Gordon, Mr. Stannis. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. So, move passes. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, John, for stress.
Yep. Thank you. Good seeing you guys. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
All right, so then we'll move on to C, where we discuss lessons learned from zoning amendment process. So you're gonna thinking that maybe you had.
It's really just open discussion, there will be another round with, the 2 items that we left for future discussion, related to the shoreline and the critical dune area. So as we think about moving into that next phase, we thought it would be important to hear from you about what worked, what didn't work, and take some of that into how we do the next, pursue the next 2 amendments. So, yeah, just looking for lessons learned on things.
Well, I think Gordon and I learned not to get appointed to the planning commission just when they're rewriting the whole code. No, listen, I think what you did was excellent. It was a very difficult topic. It was a very expansive topic. We didn't all agree on every item, but I think the lesson we learned is that we can come together, we can adopt something, we can move it forward. And I look forward to St. Patrick's Day every year now, because I'll know that another year has gone by. And we'll be asking you what's working and what's not, because we shouldn't wait years and years to make any changes if there's an issue.
I think bringing the consultant in was a great idea, but I think a lot of the most difficult part was reorganizing the entire document. And now that that's been done, I think it's going to be much easier to visit changes. I do wish that the community had been more involved. Maybe that's on us to bring people together, make more effort to do that. Because I was really surprised at how few people in the community were involved in it too. It was always open for everyone, but there just wasn't a whole lot of participation.
I'll like to comment on that because I agree with you, but I think that speaks to a greater communication challenge that the township is trying to improve upon. And it might be one of the speakers at the board meeting from the public said something about, when we have something before us, we notice adjacent properties. And they were saying, well, in this case, if we're changing an ordinance, why aren't we alerting those adjacent process properties? And maybe it's as simple as, you know, a mailing to the entire township, which can be done. Schools do it. It's done at election time. Not that expensive. I think it's something to keep in mind, because there was often feedback on people didn't know about it, even though we were sharing it all. We have our outreach, we have our, you know, e-blasts and all that. And in the beginning, all the stakeholders that we do allow the public on the advisory committees.
Right.
I mean, we all know that, but you can always do more.
I would agree with the communication is, and, you know, looking back on it is, we sent out tax bills. Should we sent, also included a flyer with the tax bills? So, you know, things that we're already doing and,
We do that.
well, I know that, but what I'm saying is you look at those type of things and can we piggyback on something or correct the election? We got a little postcard. And again, the more communication you have, and it's not just, you like to think electronics is enough or the social media is enough and so forth, but it's not. And encourage people to continue to remind them about the newsletters, and then, you know, you can get on the newsletter and you get the blast. So I agree, the communication is always something that you can do always better in everything you do. And I agree with everybody and what was already said. You know, in regards to the open house, and looking back on some of the comments in the open house is, you know, could we have done something different in regards to the open house that might have been a better communication? And I don't know whether posters would have been appropriate so that they could see. And in one individual very early in our discussion is, you know, the red line. Well, okay, you can't do, that would have been hard to do, but is there something that we could have done better to show them what was and what's going to be? And was there something that we could have done a little better about that part? I think that would have helped a lot. And I know people that I've talked to is when I sat down with them and showed them the old and the new, it's like, oh, I get it. So if we could have done, if something could be done in, since we're already talking about 2 amendments, that might be something that easily done. And the other one was, if we had more open houses and just do an article at a time, we might have to have more, but instead of one big and all 23 or so is, maybe when we did, you know, article, certain article, not maybe not the first article, but is there some of the articles when it's associated with the residential that we could have just talked residential and then commercial? So could have been broken down a little bit better, and that's all just communication. Other than that, I thought, well, I've been involved with, this is the second that I've done a rewrite, and it's tough and it takes long. And again, the more you communicate to your residents, the better off you are. So, and maybe we should have had more than one open house. That's a thought. So, but I agree with what everybody said.
Yeah, I mean, I think back and you look at it from the inside, and you're like, oh, there was all kinds of communication. You know, we reached out, we had our committee meetings, you know, they were open to the public, we invited everyone in, and you know, we went through this whole process, and every time, you know, everybody was invited, but that doesn't translate to the public. And you know, and everybody kind of, it catches their eye right at the end, which we saw. And then especially, you know, there were, you know, some people that saw it was affecting their property and came in and were not happy with the changes for whatever reason, or of course, then again, we had a lot of people that were really happy with the changes that we were making. So it, from the inside, you think there was all kinds of communication, but I think everyone here is right. It all comes down to communication. And I think Denise actually makes a really good point on the open house. Because I think back to the open house, and there's a lot of information that was spewed out in that little bit of time. And just to be able to comprehend all that as somebody just stepping into it is it's difficult, to say the least. And so but I agree with what Denise said, is if you could break that up and, you know, and then I think the public would be more willing to give some feedback at that time as well, because they comprehend it better. So, but otherwise, at the end of the day, I mean, it was a lot of work. I commend everybody here for putting the time in, and, you know, a lot of great input, a lot of hard work, a lot of time spent on it. And I was glad to watch that board meeting on last week and see it be moved forward. And to Linnea point, we still do have some work. So we knew we weren't going to get it all, but we made an incredibly good first step. So, but yeah, at the end of the day, communication is, it's always the most important when you're dealing with the public, right?
So a couple of thoughts. I think a gigantic map diagram of the zones would be really helpful to have in this space. We've seen little 2x3 foam core things on easels, and you know, we get a little thing that can print out at home, and we look on our screens at home on our laptops, and it's a lot of space. And I think a 6x6 map in this building, so that all people, builders and residents and us.
The zoning map?
Yeah, we can just walk up to it and plainly see, and there's great color separation and so forth. I think that's not just artwork. I think that would be very high utility associated with it. So I would advocate that. And then if there's some way to have one that's online that behaves more like Google Earth, where you can zoom in and you can see with some resolution versus something that becomes pixelated and difficult to read as you try to zoom in. I think that would be a useful offsite tool, just as a baseline. There was one, I think diagrams in general throughout the ordinance would be helpful. And I would ask that we would look over the next year to see how it's being digested. And if you, when you hear people say over and over, like, this is hard to understand, I don't get this, can you draw me a picture? And just keep track of that. And that brings me to my third point is, I think an annual review and an annual update is something that this team and future members of this team should commit to. And so what if it's like 2 things that need to change in 2026? Big deal. It might be 20 things that need to change that year, but just get in the cadence. So we're not dumping, or so a team doesn't get dumped on 10 years from now, right? Yeah, we know what that feels like. That's not the right thing to do. So those are my 3 thoughts.
You're right, and that's something that would be kind of right in our faces too, because we would see the difficulties of understanding some of it as somebody's coming through planning. So we could pay attention to that and try to address that.
Yeah, I mean, here's 2 people who are fairly educated on the verbiage and so forth, and we were trying to have a phone conversation about something, and it required me to do a diagram and send it to Linnea, and then she looked at it, she said, thank you, now I understand more deeply what we were just talking about. And here we are, 2 colleagues. I mean, imagine somebody who isn't a colleague wrestling with this stuff. I think those will naturally percolate to the surface, and just ask that we put a special color sticky note in your bench copy of this thing for the future.
Just related to the mapping, I did email the county on Monday, letting them know that the ordinance was adopted. They're the ones who prepared the zoning map for us in their GIS system. So they're gonna be sending digital copies, and I will be sending the digital 24x36. I can probably ask for even a bigger one, to FedEx Kinko's to have printed, so we can have some larger ones here at the hall, but we can absolutely get something even bigger. And then they're also going to be putting that overlay in their GIS system, the Allegan County system that they have, so that is searchable and zoomable, and you can click other layers like floodplains and elevations and property lines, so they're gonna be integrating all of that in as well, so you're right, that'll be
a better experience for everybody.
Can I just add to that, so as a reminder, until the construction began on the township hall, we did have 2 very large zoning maps. One was in the planner's office
Yeah.
and one was out more in public, and we often brought people over to it.
Yeah.
It's just that they haven't gone back up, so it's order, well, we weren't done with the board
Yeah.
review. And then we'll work out, where to put them, but it's a great point. And I just wanted to underscore in terms of the PR and the publicity out there, we talked a lot about that when at the last board meeting. Because for whatever reason, even though I know not everyone reads the local paper, but a lot of people do, they've kind of stopped covering the township. I don't know if you pay attention, but they write about zoning in the city of Douglas and the city of Saugatuck. They write about Lake Town. And that's because somebody writes a report and sends it to them. They write about Fenville, same thing. And this is major. I'm shocked at, so yes, we need to do more. If it means actually holding their hand during the process. But I found it disappointing to not see much about it in the local press, because it's huge. And we all know the numbers. We have 3,000 properties in the township. We dwarf the two cities combined. And a lot of this stuff is very significant. But on a positive, well, that can be improved. But it was a great journey. It was challenging. It took a lot longer though, if we look at the original dates for stuff. But anyway, we took our time, and I think that's really important. It's fun working with them. Most of the time.
I used to write letters for Boy Scouts too, when I was Scoutmaster.
Okay.
If I wanted something to get in the paper, I would personally write it, send it, it would go in verbatim, exactly how the.
It helps.
Better that way.
Yeah.
You've already before.
All right, and plus anybody else has any other comments, and once again, thank you everyone for your efforts. And also to the board I thought they handled themselves really well on Wednesday night. Listening to the pros and cons and discussing it through, and it was, I thought you guys handled it very well. So,
Thank you.
and staff as well, yes. So. All right, so if we move on to correspondence. Number 8.
Comments, right?
No.
No,
Okay, no, number 8, communications, under 8, correspondence.
These under 8.
Correspondence, just noting, the correspondence in your packet.
We take action like we completely file. We can indicate that we know that the first covers the topic spoken to us during public comment, and I did not see the longest letter in my.
That was emailed.
Yes, and he says that I have a timeline, but I'm not sure if I got the timeline. I just have the email and it says, would you share the timeline summary? I'm like, what's the timeline summary? Okay,
There was a letter that was supposed to go to you.
I don't know. I have no idea what it was. It just says, can you please forward this email with the timeline summary? Don't know what that is. Right.
I do have a timeline for his Lakeshore Resort, so I can forward that over to you. I'm not sure if Daniel had it or not, but I'll forward that.
Well, I would hope that all the commissioners would be interested, because again, that's what we've been talking about, is like, they're moving forward, but what is, that was the discussion about timeline, it's like, okay, time or extension, what, it really is what we've been talking about,
They're
so I have.
Yeah, I can forward you the timeline. They're under construction. They've
Yeah.
received permits.
And they're moving forward.
They are
That was
moving
my
forward.
question.
Yeah, there wouldn't be. They're making substantial progress.
Okay, there it's all, you don't have to do that kind of, I trust you, so. That was my question.
Okay.
Him, whatever that was. Okay.
So then there were some other letters in there from House, McElwain, Swan, Minton, Sheridan, which pretty much cover the same topic, but maybe if we discuss those, we can do that down in our PC comments at that point. But at this point, we'll just recognize we got. And then we'll move on to B for the township board report.
Thank you. So I had a little trouble with computers and document sharing from the office to my home. And I wrote the whole report today at home and it wouldn't print. I think the system changed here, so. But I made my notes. I remember everything I said, so I haven't submitted anything to the recording clerk yet. Yes, the board met last Wednesday night. And public comment, just I'll mention first, we had 7 people that spoke in favor of the township moving forward to acquire the Pine Trail Camp. And I think those same 7 people all also voiced their opinion regarding the expiration of the marina permit, like the letters we just mentioned. And there was 2 people spoke on the R4 density and 1 person spoke against expanding ADUs and didn't like the 600 square foot change in some sectors. After public comment, we went through a few things. We granted Mr. Sedesma a hearing, a 20-minute hearing. Council advisors do because he petitioned the board to hear him out. And he was basically, his main point was he's very much against the 10,000 square foot maximum on commercial projects. So we heard him out and then we had a public hearing on the ordinance itself. So there were more comments. Lene and David both gave really excellent presentations. David was here in person. Yeah, right. I did. It was almost like a BC meeting. I'm like, David was here and you were on Zoom. And more importantly, because it did, a couple of the landowners got a little, I would say, rude, but, and the issues were density in the R4 zone, which we all heard about in our meeting. And then also the 10,000 square foot and a couple of comments on having ADUs allowed in all residential areas. So the public hearing went on and both Lene and David gave, I thought, really thoughtful, excellent on the spot responses to the questions on density and other things. So we moved forward and I was happy to introduce the motion to adopt it. Trustee Brenda Marcy seconded it and we passed it unanimously. Along with that is the temporary moratorium on the 2 points in the zoning for shoreline excavation and zoning applications in critical dune area. So we have 6 months to look at those more closely. Board also adopted a new cemetery landscape service agreement, and we have sent a formal request to the Allegan County Road Commission to request no parking signs, permanent no parking signs be placed along Blue Star Highway. So we'll see where that goes.
Both north and south,
Yeah, I believe
all the
so.
way down to 89?
I don't know if it was all the way in or at least that first half where there's commercial. I think it's mainly where there's commercial.
Maybe between the regions.
And then like, well, and then where Jars is as well.
Yeah.
So. But it's up to them.
Right.
But we are trying to. Then there was a public hearing on the application grant to the Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund Board for the act to get a matching grant to acquire Pine Trail Camp. And so all the people that spoke were in favor of that. Board passed it unanimously. And then there were, I pointed out in the planning commission report, with two seats on the planning commission are up in.
Yes, I have,
July.
that was my comment.
Okay, so you can fill that.
I'll do that.
We decided we're gonna post it to the public and print in April. And then, yeah, at the end of the meeting, Chief Janet came and he was here mainly to praise working with township manager, so we heard that. 4 hours later, we adjourned.
I was just gonna say that I love how you summed it up that quickly because I was watching it and the first part of that meeting, it was 2 hours in length and my daughter was yelling that she needed the computer. And I'm like, just hold on, I want to see him approve it. So, okay, I'm sorry. Thank you.
What is the intention with Pine Creek Camp? Should we acquire Fine, too, correct, yeah.
To put it under, our Parks Commission. Create a new park in the township. So this is, obviously raising the money to buy it is phase one, then there'd be the money to actually develop it.
Mhm.
But trust fund grant is one source. As I shared with the board and, Manager DeFranco, a lot of our, 25 to 30% of our investments are liquid, so there are sources to add to that if need be, but it seems that the owners of Nitro Camp really favor the township being the purchaser, which is, I think, great news.
And they're not making more waterfront. So if you have a chance to get it, you go after it as soon as you can.
What the requirement that the DNR has for any of those grants is that there be a public hearing at the board level before applying for that grant, because often they require matching funds. So they want to make sure that the public is aware.
How many acres is it?
Oh, you probably know.
Is it 25?
I don't know.
I think it was 25.
I think that's right.
I'm getting a nodding head behind you, so I'm probably.
Oh, okay, well, she knows everything.
Yes. Just ask her.
And yes, to your point, we did have a public hearing on the application.
We had a public hearing.
Before, and then we voted.
Yes.
So that did occur, so.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, so, okay, then, Lene, staff updates?
Enforcement has always been a topic of our public comment in past meetings. Just want to give you an update on a couple of things that have come through our office. And just a reminder, if you do notice anything that might be contrary to our zoning ordinance, feel free to email me or Morgan or Cindy or the manager, all three. And then we'll start that process of investigation. We did receive a request to review the Ivy House against their approved site plan and landscape plan. There were some comments from an adjacent property owner related to the south property line and the fence. And so we've been in touch with Ivy House, and they will be extending the fence along that property line. And then the next item is related to Penny Royal. We did prepare a timeline of events for the township board. Penny Royal, we were out there in October, and they have until June 4th to make improvements to the driveway approach and parking area, consistent with our existing zoning ordinance, because that's what was in place at the time. But they did talk about wanting to do some either crushed gravel, potentially paving. They're not sure what, they weren't sure at the time in October how they would proceed. I did send them an email about a week ago, just reminding them that, the June deadline is coming up, the weather's, we're back at winter, but during the first spring we had, I did email them and to just check in on that. So that's the update on enforcement. And then related to top grade. I did receive an email that the top grade property has been sold to Johnny Walker. He's doing a private road and a land division off of Old Allegan. He's looking at some other property in the township as well. And the final document, the maintenance agreement, has been signed and notarized, and he is going to be recording that at the county, but we have a copy of that. That's partially complete, but we're waiting on that. And Van Horn Sand Mining, I wanted to let you know that they will be requesting an extension to their sand mining permit, which expires in April. The extension is and I have a copy of it, of course, you'll have a copy of the request. But essentially, they're looking to complete all of the mining activity whereby the trucks are leaving the site by the deadline. They are looking to have an extension to do earthwork on the property to get the property back in line with the reclamation plan that was approved. So, that is what they're looking to do, but that would be an amendment to their special land use. So it's not just a simple request because it changes the conditions. So that will require a public hearing and a formal review by the planning commission. Not that the other ones were formal, but it's not just an extension because it changes an element of the plan.
I remember correctly, I know there were a number of concerns about the pond there and the size of it and how it was, mainly the size, I thought it was a little bigger. And I know on on our recommendation, the board's approval, I believe one of the comments or the conditions of approval was doing an as-built of the finished pond. As I drive by it, it looks like the pond itself is finished. The sides are topsoil and most of it is landscape, well, at least ready to be landscaped. There's probably portions they prepped to seed this spring. I mean, in my opinion, it'd be at the point where they could provide that. I feel like it's something we'd want to request because a number of our residents are, are questioning that whether or not a pond was built properly. And that would be the only way for us to really know.
So what I'm hearing you say is that as part of their request for this amendment to their special land use, that you would like to see an as-built drawing.
Well, I would like to see that, but I also believe that the as-built drawing is part of their approval. So it was a condition of their approval.
Upon completion, yeah, and so, yeah, if they're
It could just be a
a
reminder.
reminder.
Yeah, I feel like
They always-
the sand miting part now is outside the boundaries of the pond. Because it's just what they have massed on the,
Yeah, all the piles
Yeah.
and stuff. Oh,
I think we need the as-built before considering the amendment.
it's just a letter that we've received so far,
Right.
so I will follow up with that
Right.
additional, yeah, the additional.
thank you. All right, that's all, yeah. And then on to D, any planning commission comments?
Well, the only thing is I was given that as there was discussed, Gordon, you're up, June 24. Your term is up. Okay, and, John, yours is up too.
No, mine runs with my term. I think it's Mr. Butler. No, Mr. Work, I'm sorry. It's
Well,
my
yeah,
work.
that too, but on here it says John Helmer.
That's a typo.
It's a typo, okay, well, that's.
Board rep runs. It's on there.
Mr. Worth is up too, so I don't know whether a letter needs to be sent or to let him know.
Well,
that
they, yeah. Oh, he knows.
You know,
Look, yeah, he asked a couple months ago, what,
okay, so, that was the only thing that was just brought to my attention.
but they should both formally apply,
Yes.
assuming you want to carry out here.
It's all this, come on.
What?
We're just getting started.
That's right. One's about that.
So that was my only.
My quick comment is, first of all, congratulations to Mr. Helmer for, that was an extensive and accurate report to do off the top of your head. I sat in those very uncomfortable chairs that those people are suffering on right now, for the whole entire meeting. And I want to congratulate David and Lene for just a tremendous amount of intelligence and grace under a lot of pressure from very unhappy people who were inaccurately reading our ordinances, and they flipped back and forth between the old ordinance and the new ordinance. David had responded at 1:30 in the morning to a problem that came up the night before, and it was a masterful performance, and you made us proud. So, thank you.
But I guess my only other comment is, are we going to put since we've got these letters in regards to the special land use, the special approval use marina, is that gonna be on our agenda sometime? Is that, it's like, okay, this is, I don't know how many, since it's probably been months that we've heard this again and again and again and again. Are we going to put this on our agenda and actually make a,
So at this point, there's an appeal period from the letters. So upon, once that appeal period has expired, then we will take the direction of our township attorney as to what the next steps are.
that means April 9th. You're talking about that they have appeals,
I think
the
that-
denials of Eagle and.
Yeah,
Yes,
I'm
early
not sure, it's,
Yes.
I believe 60 days, I think.
It's up in
decision.
beginning of April sometime.
Okay.
So if we're not going to take action, if the advice is not to take action and defer to the township attorney, I'd like to have something in writing from the township attorney that in light of whether they appeal or not, there's some report back to us, so we're not left hanging that on an oral recommendation not to take action. We have something in writing that directs us not to.
I agree, yeah, because obviously this isn't going away.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, and you're here at the meetings and listening to the comments and receiving the letters, we can understand your desire to be, responsive in whatever way that is. Thank you.
Then I appreciate the updates, Renee, in regards to all these different projects. If that's going to be something, as we think about things that we approve, they sometimes just kind of go away and we just don't think about it. And it's like, no, we really should, and so that we're prepared for when these extensions are requested and, okay, how are they moving? And it may be every other meeting that we're updated is, because some of these projects have lingered a long time. And I understand the economy sometimes will, dictate whether they can, move forward with what they had hoped, like Best Buds
Yes.
and all those. So, and I get that, but it'd be nice to just every once in a while update with some of these projects. It's always just nice to know what's happening.
Yeah, I appreciate you asking about those projects, and I always think of those comments as a challenge and an opportunity to learn and do better, and so certainly, either having them on the agenda or just doing a report where there's just an update of ongoing projects, I think would be helpful for all of us, so
I
thank
agree.
you for bringing that up.
And, I go back, we had talked about the no parking sign, so I started considering the parking issue, or this traffic issue. And I know Daniel's been working on that, and it'd be nice if we had the next meeting, a little synopsis as to kind of where that is headed.
For the Blue Star.
Yeah, just the meeting with the county.
And the study.
The study,
Study.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, because I know it's progressing but I just.
We've only had, what, 2 meetings? I think
Yeah, that
maybe
is
3,
here.
maybe 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've only had 2.
Yeah, my plan to update, it's in writing, but I can give you an update. We've only had 2 meetings. Denise is on that study committee. Chris Mantles is on that, Craig Atwood. We're bringing someone in from the disability network in this area. Most recently, last week, we did a site visit, Daniel, Craig Atwood and myself, we went down to Union Pier. If any of you haven't been down there, I urge you to go down there, Red Arrow Highway. It's kind of a sister roadway to Blue Star. There are many things in common, with that roadway and Blue Star, but they've done a complete transformation of the Union Pier cross section of Red Arrow Highway and taken it from a 4-lane down to a 2-lane with center turn lane. They've introduced some, they have a trail that they call a linear park which is extending all the way from the border, New Buffalo, and the border. And eventually the goal is to connect up to the Blue Star Trail. But that goes well beyond to even Covert and Hager Township, so it's quite an extensive network. They have the trail, they have at least a 10-foot buffer between the trail and the travel lane. In Union Pier, they have raised planters and medians on the edges to buffer the trail and sidewalk from the travel lane. And in that median, they have street trees and decorative lighting. Some people have commented that the lighting is, there are just too many streetlights, but they had to meet MDOT standards for lighting the highway, and so that quantity was required, especially because they're lower lights in terms of height to be more pedestrian scale, which means you have to have more of them to get the illumination that they're looking for. So I urge you to go down there and walk around. We met with the township supervisor as well as the parks director. We also talked to people, business owners and people using the trail, just about, you know, what they thought of the transformation. They did it 2 years ago, so it's new. But they did an economic development study before the work and after the work to see what sort of economic impact the change made, as well as just safety and crash data. So it's resulted in, I mean, I think their crash data has plummeted. Like there have not been any of the kind of fender benders and issues that they had prior. There's no vacancy in the downtown. Several of the businesses have been able to expand, especially outdoor seating, because they've created more of a place, not somewhere to drive through, but somewhere to drive to. And so they had many success stories about this transformation, and it's still a, you know, posted 45-mile-an-hour roadway, but because of the curving and the design through there, the vehicles and drivers just know to stop, because nothing attracts people like people. And so you slow down, you know, you're looking to see who's there and you know, deciding to stop and visit some of the businesses. So that's not to say that we have the same situation here on Blue Star, but there are probably commercial nodes where something like that may make sense. So look at Union Pier, and then there's another hamlet called Herbert, which is not as concentrated in terms of commercial buildings, but there are still some businesses there, and they're also doing curbing in front of those commercial businesses. And then there are parts of Red Arrow without any curb, just the same type of street roadway edges that we have. But they've used the curbing to delineate the driveways and narrow some of that driveway. And, you know, we've heard concerns about that at some of the businesses on our corridor. And that curbing, again, is one of those natural traffic calming measures, because you feel a little bit more constrained, and so you're gonna slow down. It's also near parks where they've done this curbing, so I urge you to take a look at it. It's interesting.
The traffic circle's progressing as planned.
Yeah, they don't have any of those down there. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I was seeing a lot of yellow flags along the roadway on my way here tonight that I hadn't seen before.
When's
You
the
mean that Blue
I don't
Star?
know if they're
Did
marked
I-
utilities.
I've heard they're ahead of schedule, which would mean they start in March, so I guess. I don't know anything for sure, that's.
Well, you know what, I'm gonna make one other comment on traffic, and this is in the midterm. I'd like, you know, as you're going through this, and I'll address it to the board as well as Denise on that committee, but. So the no parking signs, you know, along the edge, are, you know, I get it, you know, makes a lot of sense. I still feel that, I mean, one of our biggest issues with the traffic on Blue Star Highway is there's never a gap to get across the road for traffic or the public, you know, pedestrians as you walk. And I truly feel that if the no passing on the right was enforced, that forces gaps Because then people can't cross, you know, they're not flying around people on the right and then keeping that traffic flowing. So what they're stopping and they're not, you know, they don't pass on the right and then it creates a gap and allows somebody maybe to cross the road or to, you know, to turn left across Blue Star Highway. I mean, it's all very, to me, it's, you know, amateur traffic engineer. But I feel like if, you know, if maybe the township could push the county to, you know, enforce maybe that no passing on the right, I think it would create a lot safer situation on Blue Star Highway.
No, it's a good point. I don't know what those words mean. Cause I guess it would be to the sheriff's department. You're talking about enforcing people doing it.
Oh, yeah, I didn't know.
Otherwise, they'd have
Never
to
had any
take the
ability-
shoulder out. I
Never
don't
had any
know.
ability to push.
I know,
There's another dimension to
Throwing it
that,
out there.
and that is,
I'm on the record.
I'm not sure everybody knows you can't do that. So if we're putting up signs,
They don't.
if we're putting up
Sign saying no
signs
passing
for
on
the
right.
parking, then while we're at it, we put up some signs that say no passing on right. That might help.
If you're gonna start using common sense.
But I agree, I don't think most people know that's illegal. They kind of think that lane's there. Yep.
Well, and often it's quite wide. You
Yes,
know, and so-
exactly.
I understand the attraction.
Yeah.
It's a wide shoulder.
I didn't know it was illegal.
It's on your driver's test.
We didn't get that one right. Cool.
Solid pipeline.
So, all right, I'm off my soap.
I have a related question to the. I'm sorry.
Well, no, you know, the one sign I noticed, it was biking up on 66. It says no motor vehicles drive on the shoulder or something to that effect. Is, you know, you might not know about passing on the right. And again, if we know about the solid white line, okay, we're not supposed to do that. But again, you know, they talk about, and I've seen this in a lot of places, is they have a sign that says motor vehicles don't drive on the shoulder or something to that effect. And I think it's up on Holland's, it's probably on 64th maybe, or somewhere up in that way. South of 147, I think it is. 147 and 64. So, you know, there are some things that we can do, but you know, again, the signs only keep honest people honest. You're always gonna have all those, you know, people who care less about the signs, but you know, you're going to. And, yeah, enforcement would be nice, but you know, you're not gonna put a sheriff, county sheriff every, you know, 50 feet and hope that they catch
People
someone.
get pulled over, they start thinking.
So, there might be something we could do about that.
I think that resolution was shared with your county commissioner too, for the district and it.
No, I suggested
Right,
that.
and I know that piece is
I don't know if that's happened yet.
yeah, we might wanna just follow those agendas for the road commission if they take this up to have. You know, but you all know in case.
You let us know what it is, you'll go over and yell at them.
Another.
And if you get the chance, trustee Brenda Marcy is our representative to the road commission, so.
Right.
So it's very involved and engaged with them, so.
Speaking of the no parking signs, those will only be as good as they're enforced too. What is the penalty for parking there? Does anybody know?
Probably a misdemeanor, $100.
Parking on roadway.
What's a ticket? I'm just curious if anybody knows the real answer.
A couple years ago, it was $140.
$140, was it? Okay.
That was back in 2018.
That'll deter.
Okay, it's daylight, folks.
All right.
Motion to adjourn.
Second public comment.
So if there's no more comments from the commissioners, we'll move on to number 9, the public comment period. So same rules as before apply. If you come up and speak.
Yes. Do you mind passing these around? Brought some visuals.
Yeah, just say your name and your
Yep.
address and.
John Newland, 6548 Old Singapore Trail, but I'm speaking on behalf of our business at 3350 Blue Star, which is Roman Black, and I'm here tonight just to kind of follow up. We received a letter from Daniel regarding the unanimous vote to recommend no parking along the Blue Star Highway. And I'm not gonna read everything I wrote, but I gave you guys a lot of visuals where we need your help, because You guys were not in place, most of you were not when you all first came on board and applied for all of their different variances and or applied for their parking and all that, but it was suggested by Daniel that all of the situation that we are experiencing could be handled through an easement agreement. And I would like to disagree with that, respectfully disagree with that, because what we had found out through working with our attorney, there were several codes and ordinances that have not been followed. Number one being some of the most obvious. Section 4017, which is the seat, and I apologize because I have the old ordinances, not the new yet, but this was saying this in having in C2, which we are in C2, having a takeout window is not prohibited, and they definitely operate a takeout window. And basically, what most of this is about is parking, and you'll see from the images there. Our fear is that when we had the temporary no parking signs that you guys put up, well, the fire department put up, it increased the parking nightmare in the parking lots because there are not sufficient parking spaces for Pennybrook. What was presented and what was actually built, you know, it's not the same. And we brought it up at the last meeting, and John, I think you had even brought up the part about who's reinforcing these zoning rules. You know, there was not a drainage plan brought to the township when they built and covered the back portion where there were drains that we had put in. They covered that with a patio. The amount of parking spaces that are drawn on the permit that was accepted is not the same as what's actually there.
30 seconds,
Pardon?
30 seconds left in your comment.
Okay, so I guess that's what I'm saying is, please just take a look at the conditions that you're seeing. Maybe go walk the space, because if you walk the space, you'll see what's causing this nightmare. And by having no parking along the Blue Star, it's only going to be more crowded. We're getting 18-wheelers into our driveway, blocking our parking spaces and blocking people from being able to charge their automobiles. So I appreciate the no parking along the Blue Star. It is a nightmare, but if things are not enforced and Pennyroyal is not made to comply with having the quantity of parking spaces that they need, or the drainage, or all of the other things that you'll see in this outline, just take a look at the imagery. I think pictures speak 1,000 words. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I have 30 minutes. I'm Elliot Stern. I live at 2579 62nd Street in the township. 3 quick comments. Gordon, the idea about the maps, were you thinking of putting something up on the wall here, something big?
Mhm.
Good. I like that idea. I think it is important to know, because if you were talking about looking at it on a laptop, it doesn't have quite the same impact. It's a paper map where you can see and get a real feel for these zones are. David, I want to thank you for your accurate and eloquent presentation. Very, very good. Lastly, I want to bring up the idea about Pine Trail Camp. If you guys aren't familiar with this, please take a walk back there. It's gorgeous, it's beautiful, and I would hate to have that lost to a developer. It's pristine and it's been there for, well, 50, 60 years maybe. I don't know if we can use the cabins. That's out of my league, but just the property itself is gorgeous. And again, let's keep it in the township. Let's keep it for the park district. That's what I got. Thank you.
Thank you.
So says the park commissioner.
Full disclosure.
Anyone else? Is there anyone,
Scott, go ahead and unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Scott Waringa, and I own property at 6618 Dugout Road, which is just right across the street from Pine Trail Camp. And then also 3468 Holland, which you may know as the McEnroe Conservation Easement, which is also adjacent to Pine Trail Camp. I spoke at the township board meeting, and I just want to reiterate my comments to you guys that I fully support the attempt or the grant application for Pine Trail Camp. My wife and I, we miss the days of the camp when there were like bands and stuff that used to play there and people there. And we would just love to see it be a township park. I think that would be a great asset to the community, and just fully support your attempts at trying to acquire that. Thank you.
thank you.
No one else on Zoom?
Anyone else?
No.
Okay. All right, at this point, I'll close the public comment meeting and I will entertain a motion to adjourn. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.